the advice just came from somebody who hadn't been through the experiences that I was going through, so they could only give me advice off of their own fears, their own philosophies, and the like. So I had to learn with the family to only share the good shit, right? So I would share, they'd ask how the business going. I'm like, oh, we brought on a new client. Not the fact that we were missing, a huge chunk of money that somebody didn't pay us, right? But as I shared the good stuff, they could celebrate the wins for me.
Comprehend the difference between the statement. Like if you say, I am, whatever follows that statement is what you are, then your mind goes, oh, that's who we are, right? So and this goes both ways. So if you say, I am anxious, then your mind finds ways to be anxious. If you say, I am overwhelmed, then you will find ways to be overwhelmed. But if you say, I am feeling anxious, I am feeling overwhelmed in this moment, okay, accept the feeling. Now what do I do about it?
All right, Mark, running a business is by far the toughest thing I've ever done in my life, right? It's become the most rewarding because I don't think there's a greater tool on this planet to meet the dude in the mirror than to building a business, man, because you're going to see what the hell you're made of more than any other tool on the planet. But I will tell you, man, the mindset game of I hate the idea of this toxic positivity. You got to be happy about everything. I truly believe fucking rage builds a lot of cool shit as long as it doesn't turn into darkness, but there's a lot of weight on running a business and trying to keep your head right. I don't want to say how do I stay happy through all this, but how do you freaking manage the mindset of building a business, keeping up with your family, the household? I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life freaking, everything's together. It's all one damn thing, right?
Yeah.
Right. But how do you really keep your mindset in the game while you're doing all this?
Yeah, such a great question. So I want to preface this with I separate happiness and joy. To me, those are two very different terms. So
Yep.
happiness is like sadness, anger, frustration. It's a feeling in the moment, where joy is that deep-seated, like you're not going to take my joy away from me. And I've been a happy person all my life. Like as long as I can remember, I have a smile on my face. I torture people for a living, and I still get them to smile back at me when they leave the gym, which is really awesome.
Yeah, I promise you, I will never step a foot in your fucking gym. I've seen the videos.
It's so fun though. It's so fun. But I look back. So my dad was a salesman, and he sold every fucking thing you can imagine: cars, shoes, pianos, homes, transmissions. Like he was just a salesperson. To this day, he could probably walk in anywhere and be the number one salesperson. It's just how he's wired. And so I had this example of, I didn't know I was learning at the time, because he was never the guy that like sat me down and said, let me teach you this, son. Right. I just watched and observed. And we lived on our car lot for most of my, like throughout high school and middle school. So I saw it day in and day out. I saw the way he interacted with people. I saw the way that he treated people. And of course, in the home, I saw how he reacted to what was happening. And he ran a really successful business for a long time. Again, it doesn't come without hardships, and shit goes sideways, and that, blows up on that car, and that one becomes a dud that you didn't think was going to happen or whatever. So, I would watch the way that he handled things. Simultaneously, my grandmother was also a huge influence in my life growing up. So it was basically my dad and my grandma kind of raised me. And the last 15 years of my grandmother's life, she had breast cancer, bone cancer, stomach cancer, Jesus, diabetes, high blood pressure, 2 strokes. And, it was one of those, so she was born in 1919. So she smoked like everybody else smoked for a long time. And women didn't work out, and food was, it was probably actually not that unhealthy looking back, because of what
compared to the crap we're getting now.
Yeah. But, not really an active physical lifestyle. And there wasn't a lot of, like I said, there wasn't a lot of women taking care of themselves. So she just suffered the consequences of that, at the end of her life. And I watched this lady operate through all that with a smile on her face. Mm. And again, didn't really realize the lesson I was being taught at that time.
Right.
But she'd wake up and she'd be like, oh, thank you, God, for another day. And she'd walk around with a smile on her face, and she'd greet everybody. And she didn't care whether people were grumpy back to her or not, because at the last years of her life, she lived in this, it was like an apartment complex for old people. It
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah, yeah.
it wasn't assisted living, but people were there in
Senior
case they
living.
needed help. Yeah. And, you know, a bunch of grumpy old people for
Yep.
sure. But she refused to be one of them. And I remember her saying, she's like, look, you know, I could complain and she would have every right to complain. Like none of us, you
Mm.
know, if she walked around and was like, man, my fucking this hurts and that hurts, like nobody would have faulted her. But she said, look, I don't want to hear me complain. So surely no one else wants to hear it either.
Right.
And I
Right.
remember that. I'm like, huh, all right. So there's something to this. And people would call, she volunteered in the office of that building, and people would call and they could hear her smiling.
Mm.
So there was this example of joy that I'm like, man, like life just kicked the shit out of her, and she just rolled right through it and went, well, I'm still here, so we're going to keep getting up and doing this thing. And so as I got a little bit older, you know, I was married and divorced super young. You know, I have 3 kids now, but you know, one of them's a baby, so he's brand new. But
Brand new.
my two older boys are 21 and almost 16.
Shit, I
Two,
didn't realize you were that old.
you know, I look
Damn.
good. I work out, man. I look good. You know.
I mean, I thought you were in your 60s, but go ahead.
um, you know, so poor choices. You know,
Yeah,
I do have
yeah.
a book called Make Good Choices, and a lot of that's because of the poor choices I made early in life. But you know, I don't regret my kids, but obviously
Right,
relationally,
right.
I was a little bit retarded and you know, trying to figure things out. But I that story of my grandma would just kind of play in the background of like, okay, you're going through some shit, and I don't ever take anything away from the things that people are going through.
Right.
You know, our problems they're all first world problems. Let's make no mistake about it. But there's
100%.
still ours to deal with. It doesn't mean they're not real. It doesn't mean that we don't feel them, and it doesn't mean that we don't have to deal with the consequences of them. But I
And
don't,
it
you know,
doesn't also mean that the level that we feel them is either worse, better, you know, or anything else than how anybody else feels about what they're going through.
right.
Right. Ours aren't more tougher than theirs. Theirs aren't more tougher than ours. They're ours.
They're
Right.
ours. And you know, look, I don't wake up wondering if I'm going to eat or if
Right.
I have a roof over my head. Like, you know, there's billions of people with that issue in the world, right? So I'll take my problems over theirs any day of the week. But they're still mine to deal with. But I would still have the story of my grandma playing in the back of my head, like her body just failing her at every turn and still operating with joy. And so I'm like, is it really that bad?
Mm.
If I'm concerned about rent, if I'm concerned about the next hire, if I'm concerned about payroll, if I'm concerned about client acquisition or client retention, or man, like, you know, things are getting tight. We lost some people because of this or that or whatever. Like, again, I have to figure that out. But is it really that big of a deal? And sometimes it is, right? Like the landlord apparently wants me to pay rent every month, fuckers. You know, they don't care how good or bad my business is. They want their rent.
Right. Right.
So that's a concern. I have to be concerned with that. But again, in the grand scheme of things, it's like you start to look back and if you're willing to take stock of what you've been through, you know, you've been through some shit, right?
Yeah. For sure.
So if you're willing to look back and go, okay, what have I overcome? Well, everything. Like you've literally overcome everything. If you are still here and breathing, the worst shit that life has thrown at you, you've overcome it. And in the moment, sometimes that's not the greatest reassurance because you're like, well, I'm in some shit now. Okay, that's fine. But you've always figured it out. And until
So
you don't, there's really no reason to sit there and throw this pity party that lasts, you know, throw a pity party for half a day. That's fine. But like, then you got to get up and take some action.
well, the I want to hit on that phrase. You always figure it out because I have a theory that alone is one of the biggest thing that holds people back, and I'll explain that. So because people always figure it out, they don't actually learn the lesson because they don't go through the shit. So let's say somebody's constantly bucking up against their finances, right? And they're paycheck to paycheck, right? And they're like, but dude, I always figure it out. They're not actually learning the lesson about how to fix their fucking finances. They're always figuring it the fuck out. Right. So I think there's part of it in understanding, and feel free to tell me I'm wrong, but part of it is understanding that I have to go through this, because if I just figure it out, I'm not going to learn the lessons on it. And I'll say for me, the idea of, dude, this is a lesson I have to learn keeps my mindset in check more often, because I'm like, I have to learn this. I mean, this sucks, but I have to learn how to do this thing, or I'm going to find myself right back here. Agree with that?
Yeah, and as a business owner, we have to operate with some discernment of the things we're going through, and business relationships, they all kind of mold together, right? So
Right.
when
100%.
you find yourself in the same situation the second time, like that should pique your ears up a little bit. Go, okay, why am I here again? The third time, now you're just an idiot because you're not paying any attention to what's going on, and to your point, like you're not learning the lesson that you need to learn, so you
Yeah.
don't have to go through that same problem again. And honestly, like, look, we operate in this very small niche of people. Like, it seems like everybody, when you surround yourself on social media with a certain type of person, it can seem like everybody knows this or that, or say, you see the same sayings over and over again, which is fine. But like, the average person doesn't operate that way.
Right.
And we'll sit there and beat ourselves up thinking, man, fuck, I should have done this and I should have done that. But at least you're cognizant enough to be aware of the problems, where most people, to your point, like most people that just figure it out, that's all they ever do.
Yep.
Right. They don't move past that stage of figuring it out. They're
Right.
just like, well, we fucking figure it out. I don't know. I'll take a loan out on my car and pay that back at 80% interest. That's not figuring it out.
Right.
That's piecing some shit together so you can eat tomorrow.
You know, one of the other things that I had to learn, and this was a tough fucking lesson to learn, is learn to talk about the things with the people in the right situations. So I know I was early building a business, man, and I got no entrepreneurs in my family. Mom, dad, blue collar as hell. So I had nobody in my immediate vicinity that knew anything about building a business, and I was failing miserably, especially early on. I had no fucking clue how to build a business, right? Some people could even went so far as said I had no business building a business, but fuck them, I did it anyways. Um, and I would remember there was so many times I would be at the end of the day and just fucking toasted, man, freaking mentally burnt out, broke, and I would sit around my family and I'd bitch and moan about how bad the business was doing. And all of a sudden, advice started coming. They were like, well, you can go get a job. You should just, why would you put yourself through this? Right. And it was all advice out of love. Right. They were really trying to be extremely helpful. Right. The advice just came from somebody who hadn't been through the experiences that I was going through. So they could only give me advice off of their own fears, their own philosophies, and the like. So I had to learn with the family to only share the good shit, right? So I would share, they'd ask how the business going. I'm like, oh, we brought on a new client. Not the fact that we were missing, a huge chunk of money that somebody didn't pay us, right? But as I shared the good stuff, they could celebrate the wins for me. And I started thinking through, okay, cool, how else do I use this? And I started looking at the conversation I was getting into. I'm like, cool, when I go in this room, this is the shit I talk about. I don't talk about all this shit over here. And I think for a lot of people, they're never thinking about what they're saying to different individuals. And I think that's causing them to not be able to find the joy, if you will, because they're constantly finding themselves in these negative conversations. And let's face it, misery loves company.
Or to take that one step further, they start voicing their problems to the wrong people, but in comparison to those people, they're still doing really well, and it can stunt someone's growth.
Oh yeah, well said.
Because then they're like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess, why am I complaining? I mean, I should be grateful, which we should always be grateful. But if somebody's like, well, you should be grateful for what you have, well, just because you have problems doesn't mean you're not grateful for those things.
Right.
And something that I wish I would have learned way earlier on in my career is that finding those rooms to be in that you can actually voice the concerns that you have as a business owner. Like, you need to pay to be in those rooms.
Right.
And I did a lot of, like, old school networking, chamber of commerce, BNI bullshit, whatever. And it was such a take environment. And it wasn't until I really started paying good money to be in programs around coaches, around other people that operated at my level or higher that I could learn from. And when you hear somebody going, oh man, like we acquired this property and here's the issues we had with this. And, you know, we start talking about problems that you didn't even know existed before. And you're like, oh, okay, this is where I can say, hey, like I'm struggling with this aspect of my business. And nobody goes, well, be happy with what the fuck you got. Like,
right.
I'm trying to grow here, motherfuckers, you know?
It was like I had Doug Mitchell on. He's speaking at the summit too, and Doug was like, "Dude, I paid $40,000 to go to this mastermind." He goes, "I'm in a room with these 7, 8, 9-figure companies." And he goes, "I can tell you, I was the smallest fish in that freaking room." He goes, "Imposter syndrome was fucking real, you know, because here I'm sitting around all these people that I didn't think I needed to be in there." And he's like, "You know, 3 months in, I had a lot of those people as clients." He goes, I had 13 years of building sales teams. And even though those guys were running these successful companies, they'd never built sales teams. They never put that together. He goes, it wasn't my intent to go in and sell my services. But as I was learning from them, they learned my background and story. They finally started asking me, they're like, would you come in and help me figure out how to build out a sales team? And so he's like, I finally had to say, fuck it, I'll just turn this into a business. He goes, I was just trying to level up. And now I got all these people asking me to do it. And that's the power of getting into the rooms with the right freaking people. I'm not saying you do it to grow your business. It's going to happen for sure, but it's going to, when you get around people that have done the things you're trying to do, when you put your head down and go, man, I'm just fucking up. They're like, look, just do this, 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 and this. And you go, fuck, where was that 10 minutes ago? Right. You know, because it's an absolute freaking game changer.
Well, you know, my buddy Thomas, I know he was just on with you recently.
Yeah.
Thomas Keenan, you know, him and I always talk about speed is currency. I've heard him say that so many times. And part of being in those rooms is compressing time. You know, all the mistakes you've made, other people have made those before.
Right.
And if you can find the right people that are 10 steps ahead of you right now, where they can go, hey, the next mistake you're going to make is this. So go ahead and not make that one and head that off and take this course of action instead. You're like, oh shit. Okay, I just saved a year, maybe 18 months, maybe 2 years worth of strife because I got to skip a couple of steps because I was willing to voice what my issues were, and I was willing to pay in places that I know those people can help. And it's hard. You know, I get it. Like, I remember the first coach that I paid for, I'm like, fuck, how am I going to pay for this? Like, you know, what seemed like a lot of money then isn't anything now, but you know, still in the beginning, it's scary because you're like, is this real? You know, are these people real? Or, you know, or is this some MLM scam?
Yeah, right. And that's my conundrum sometimes with, you know, trying to tell people to invest and get in these rooms, because you got the bro marketers, you got the freaking, you know, the Cardone Nation, which is greaseball as fuck to me, you know, and you got these type of places that are so they're bloodthirsty shark waters that are trying to make a fast buck. Right. So you really got to vet the rooms that you're getting into to make sure there's a value. I will say with a caveat with that, you can learn even in a shitty room, right? 'Cause sometimes it's learning what not to do, right?
You know, there's going back to the original question of like, you know, keeping that joy as you go through the growth and the struggle and all that. One of the things, and so my wife is a very high-end hairstylist. And she opened up her own salon space 3 years ago, terrified, but she's been doing hair for like 17, 18 years at that point. So like total expert. I'm like, you're going to fucking crush it. And she has. But I told her, I said, babe, like at any time you can change all of it. Anything that you're doing, when you run the show, you can change it. You can wake up tomorrow and go, I don't like this business model anymore. I want to do something different. And this is how we're going to do it. And you can do it. And I think a lot of times we get so married to the thing that we started and the way that we crafted it because we were so certain that that's the way it was supposed to be and it was going to work. And then it starts not working, but you're like, damn it, I don't quit. I'm not a quitter, which people get mostly dudes, but like people get in trouble with that because it's like, no, you should just fucking quit that and pivot.
It's like riding the Titanic down. By God, I'm not jumping off this fucking boat.
Oh my God. Oh, the memes on that are gold. Anyway, but like at any given time, you can change things. And that's something that, I've realized over the years. So if I try something that doesn't work, or I don't like it anymore, or it doesn't fulfill me in the way that I want my business to fulfill me, I stop, and I just pivot to something else. And I've always had a willingness to throw things out there and see what works and what doesn't work. I don't know if you ever go through Facebook memories, but I've been on Facebook since 2008. And
Same.
and the amount of things that I have forgotten that I attempted to do over the years is astounding.
I go back and look at old quotes and shit, and I'm like, I really said that, like, in public?
Yeah, I'm like, damn, I was a fucking idiot. But like the amount of programs that I've tried to launch, or partnerships that I've tried to do that didn't work, you just have to try them sometimes. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and then you move forward. A buddy of mine, he worked for a guy that most people know, that runs a very, very, very large clothing company that came on the scene a couple years ago. And he said, working for that guy, it was always just move forward. Like whatever happens, just move forward. Never go backwards. And it doesn't mean don't look back. It doesn't mean don't learn, but just never go backwards. Like find the solution and move forward. And knowing that it's out there, like very, very few of us are doing anything that hasn't been done before.
Right.
Like I've been in fitness for 20 years. I'm not doing anything that anybody's not doing or hasn't done. I have my own spin on it. I have my own take. I have my own philosophies, right? But I'm not doing anything groundbreaking. You got like Elon Musk, he's doing some shit that nobody's ever done before, right? Like we're going to Mars or whatever.
Right.
But there's just very few humans on Earth that are doing anything that different, which means there's always somewhere or somebody to learn from for the thing that we're trying to do. Because you don't need it all. Like, you're building this great network STN, but you're not trying to build it to 1 million people. Maybe you are. I don't know. That sounds like a fucking headache, right?
Yeah. Well,
if you get that much of the market share, you'll have everything you ever wanted in the world, right?
Dude, I'll tell you, when I first started out, you want to talk about kicking your own ass mentally. It took me bringing in an outside consultant, an actual fractional COO into the company. And I was stressed to the nine, dude, beating the shit out of myself because I was getting to that place where I'm like, fuck, I'm overworking. I'm doing too much. I'm not spending time with the wife. And he sat across from me and he just looked at me and goes, tell me about the business you're building. And I said, man, I'm looking for that corporate structure. I want the employees. I want the skyscraper. I want all of this. And as I was saying the words, I'm like, that ain't the fucking thing I want at all. and Bob looked at me and he goes, well, then don't build that fucking business. What kind of business do you actually want? And it was the first time I realized, dude, I haven't been building a business around the lifestyle I want to live. I was recreating the corporate life that I ran from.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of people need to think about, what is it they're trying to accomplish? Are they doing what they want to do, what fulfills them and lights them up? Or are they doing what somebody else told them to do? Because I know I was building what I was hearing all these gurus say, to build versus going, what do I really want?
That is, I believe, the absolute hardest piece of the puzzle is to be honest enough to go, what do I want? Because there's what the world tells you should want. And again, some of that may be valid. Some of it's invalid. Depends on what you want, right?
Right.
But and in the age of social media, where you see everybody's highlight reel and you see, the rented cars and the, like I took a trip to Cabo with a bunch of buddies of mine. We stayed in this big ass mansion on the hills. Like it was gorgeous. We had, a staff there waiting on us hand and foot, whatever. Like we could have easily just taken a bunch of pictures, be like, oh,
Right.
no, we were on vacation. Like
you should have totally done that as a social post. Just like, look at my house. I'm just kidding, guys. I'm on vacation.
Yeah. At 0 point were there any, make no mistake about it. That was not our house. I don't live there. Like, nor would I ever front like that. Right.
Right.
But it's hard to ask yourself that question and then sit with it and go, what do I actually want? And, there's exercises I'm sure you've seen. It's like build out your ideal day or your ideal week. But the thing is that changes all the time.
Yes.
3 years ago, I didn't plan on having another child. I got married in 2020 to my current wife, and she was kind of on the fence of, she didn't have any kids at the time. And she was on the fence of like, do I want to have a baby or not? She's big time in her career, always been a very driven businesswoman. And now we have an almost 8-month-old baby. Well, that fucking changes everything, right? That, you
Right?
know, so my perfect day or perfect week or whatever 3 years ago is not what it is now, because now there's another human being that I'm responsible for.
That you're probably already teaching to do chin ups. You know.
Yeah, I mean his burpees are good, push-ups are good. We're
But
working
no,
on the pull-ups.
it's a huge part that, I mean, life, your life should be evolving, so your perfect day should change. And I tell people all the time, I said, if your network is the same network you were hanging out with 5 years ago, you're probably living the same life you were living 5 years ago, right? That shit has to evolve. This is the other power of getting in those damn rooms, is your network's going to upgrade, your people are going to upgrade, your life is going to upgrade to whatever it is you're trying to upgrade to. But I think people hold on to shit, relationships and the like, way longer than they absolutely should, because let's be honest, it feels good to be the top of the heap when it should feel better to be the low guy on the totem pole trying to catch up to the motherfuckers. I'll say I suffer from the, oftentimes I look around, I'm like, shit, how did I get to the top of this room? I've got to find a new fucking room. And I think the mental game that I fight is, how do I challenge myself to find the better rooms? And I bet a lot of other people do the same damn thing.
Yeah, complacency is really easy, and most people reach a tipping point of like everything's kind of good, right? And then you start looking over your shoulder like, what the fuck's about to go wrong in my
Right.
life? Because
Something gonna break.
everything's not supposed to be this good. Something that I've worked with clients on in the past to kind of address that is, like, I believe that, so the why, like, what is your why? Everybody,
I hate it.
what is your why, right? Yeah, I'm on the fence with it, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, my why is my wife and my kids, and I'll do everything for them. And I get it, I understand why people say that, but I always challenge it,
Yep.
because the first person I ever heard like speaking out loud about this in recent time is Gary Vee, where he's like, I envision my whole family getting murdered or dying in a horrible car wreck. But
right.
I'm like, that's what I'm looking for. Because if look, there's only two things that I have control over. It's my thoughts and my actions, and that's it. I don't have control over anything else. And the more I accept that that is a fact, the more joy I have, because it means that I control what's in here, and then I control what I do with the information that I'm receiving from the world. So I love my wife, I love my kids, and I would do almost anything for them. But if something happened to them that was outside of my control and they were gone, but I've said for years, oh, they're my purpose, they're my why. Well, now what the fuck is your why?
Well, and I think that not everybody, I can't put a blanket statement on that, but a lot of people, their identity is what they do,
Mm-hmm.
not who they are. And I can tell you a lot of my career, I'm like, how successful I am determines my worth. And when you do that, when you put your value and how you see yourself on the things you're doing versus who you are as an individual, you will walk up to a lot of people and like hand them a whiteboard and say, will you tell me what my worth is? Because obviously my worth is how much money I have, how many deals I've closed, how many things I've won, versus going, you know what? I just like the motherfucker in the mirror. I like hanging out with that dude,
Uh,
and for me, it's, and I'm still learning to meet that guy for sure. But there's a lot of things I've done to try and get to know that guy in the mirror a hell of a lot better. Like, I do these morning walks, man. And when you get a chance, and Jerry McNamara, who I just had on not too long ago, he talked about, you got to get white noise in your life. And I said, what the fuck is white noise? He goes, exactly what you think it is. And I said, dude, I feel like you want me to stare at a blank wall. He goes, well, kind of. He goes, I want you to get to a place where, it's just you. He goes, I think a CEO of every company should spend an hour a day in nothing but white noise, right? Thinking about, what are you doing with the business? How are you working on the business? How are you working on you? And I do a version of that with walking, but not as well as I should. And I think, because people aren't spending that time trying to meet the dude in the mirror, they're robbing themselves of joy because they're putting their worth on all the things they do.
If you know 75 hard, and even if you
Yeah.
don't, it really doesn't matter. But 75 hard requires one outdoor workout every single day for at least 45 minutes. And I've done it multiple times, and I've been through there's a whole year long Live Hard program that I've been through as well. And every single time that I've done it, about 60 to 90 days later, everything in my life is improved. So not necessarily in the moment, but a little bit later. And I know, like, I literally know what happens because I go outside to do these workouts. And a lot of times I don't put music in, or I don't have headphones. I'm not listening to anything. I'm just out there with my thoughts for 45 minutes. Right. But to that point of the white noise, it allows your brain to first relax, and then all these thoughts start coming.
Right.
And it's all the thoughts that, I believe that when you have a problem in your life, and define that however you want, when you want a solution to something, like, your subconscious is nonstop working on it. So when you have that aha moment of, wake up in the middle of the night, like, oh shit, that's what I need to do, right? You didn't just think of it then. Like, your brain's been trying to figure it out ever since you were like, hey, we have a problem and I would like to find a solution for this problem.
Right.
Well, that white noise facilitates that getting in, especially outdoors. Like, there's power of being outdoors, especially because so many of us sit behind a computer all day,
Yep.
or we're inside. We don't have physical labor jobs like we used to. No, I don't mow my lawn. I don't wash my car. Like somebody does all that stuff for us, right? But just being out in nature and getting some sunlight on your skin and being with your own thoughts is so, so, so beneficial. And most people literally never, ever do that.
Well, I think there's a couple reasons they're not doing it. Reason number one, the uber woo woo crowd has made that shit so weird. I mean, I've met people that talk to aliens and fucking different language, and I'm like, what the fuck am I talking to, right?
Sun in their buttholes and stuff.
Yeah. I'm like, Jesus Christ. So I think that has an effect on it. But two, I think, we have become a slave to the computer, the slave to our phones, slave to technology and everything else. And there is a whole era of generations that didn't grow up like I grew up. I grew up camping, doing different things, and that stuff just doesn't happen anymore. And shit, my mom worked for a physical therapy office for a while, and there was this thing they put on the sole of somebody's foot that pulled all like the toxins out of the foot. It was fucking insane. That thing would just go solid black. And the first time somebody said, "Have you ever walked barefoot outside?" I said, "Well, not on my farm because all the freaking animals and everything else, you wouldn't." But I do know for a fact that if you take even just taking your shoes off when you walk around, having your feet on the ground, there's a fucking weird shit ton of power that happens by doing that kind of stuff. The same with getting sun on your body and getting outdoors. And I think it's just healthy for people in nature to change up the rhythm of whatever their damn norm is. And to your point, getting outdoors is one of the coolest things you could do.
Yeah, and we're so worried about missing out on things, which that's the downfall of social media. And
Right.
I love social media. Like, I use it every day.
Same.
It brings me joy. I find I surround my following, and the people that I follow are all fun and motivating.
I
And
like everything but
uplifting.
TikTok because TikTok can be a fucking brain suck.
Yeah,
I'm
that's a
like,
shit
I'm just
show.
gonna post a video. Fuck me 2 hours later. Yeah.
But the lost art of just being with you. And look, if you're building a business, you can't fucking get away for a day and not look at your phone. What have you built?
Yes.
What are you missing out on? Number one, you're probably not missing out on anything, to be honest with you. But to me, like, long term, yeah, in the beginning, you got to work your ass off and do everything yourself. That's most of us have done that. But like, at some point, you should be scaling things and figuring out how to optimize things. And you should be able to go away and not be a slave to your phone and your computer and not have to take everything with you. I just got back from a 4-day trip with my son. We went down to Austin. He rides BMX bikes, and there was a handful of skate parks down there. And he's like, hey, can we do that this summer? I'm like, hell yeah, we can. So, we went down there, and I had to pull out my computer one time because I had to run payroll. Apparently my people like to be paid too.
Paid, right?
But like 4 days, I pulled out my laptop for 5 minutes, and that was it. And I put it back away because that's my time with him.
Right.
And
I also I hear you, but I don't want people to beat themselves up for pulling out their phone because, dude, I love social media. And so that's my biggest thing. I want to respond. I want to interact. I want to engage. So my wife has just learned that I'm gonna pick up my phone. I'm gonna comment. I'm gonna interact. But I get a lot of joy out of doing that. So I don't want to be the caveat, don't beat the shit out of yourself because you're down with your son at a skateboard and picking up your fucking phone. I think it's cool that you were able to do that, but I would also say, freaking do the thing that you do get joy out of, and then go right back to the fucking moment of where you were at. Right?
Yeah.
Don't get sucked into it.
Yeah. I mean, I was still posting and
Right?
sharing shit memes with my friends. Like that never stops.
Yeah.
But that need that like, oh shit, I need to
Yeah.
be doing this or doing that for my business or whatever. Like there's all that stuff will always be there. Your to-do
Yes.
list never, that, like, your to-do list never ends. There's always something on there. There's always one more thing you could have done. And we have to be okay with knowing that if the big nuggets got done, then that's what needs to be done. Like, at no point do any of us, are there 10 things that are high priority.
Right.
Like, usually it's one or two maybe that are like, this needs to get done in order to move my business forward, and everything else is just ancillary stuff that it'll get done when it gets done. You can, or you hire somebody, you outsource it, or it doesn't even matter. Something's on your, it's like a New Year's resolution list that, the last 8 things on there are still there from last year. You're like, that shit didn't matter to you. Don't
Right.
even write it down again.
Right. Tom Bilyeu said something on one of his episodes. His episodes are hard to listen to right now because he's so changed up the shit he talks about. He used to talk about business and shit all the time, and now he's all into relationships and stuff. And I'm like, I got a great relationship. Go back to business. But he talks about when he was running his business, one of the things that he learned is anytime he got to a moment of overwhelm, because running a business, you can have all of a sudden, you can have a whole shit ton of things coming at you. And I started doing what he said to do, and it actually freaking worked. And he said, I just learned to stop and go, I don't do overwhelm. And it was such a freaking quick shift. And I remember the first time I did it, I was like, huh, how the fuck did that work? Right? It was just a total state of mind shift, because instead of staying in the muck of things, I was just like, I don't do overwhelm. And all of a sudden my mind said, okay, we're not doing this. What are we doing next?
So, to follow that up, I like that. When people say, and this is the exact point, like, if somebody goes, I'm anxious, right? No, you are feeling anxiety. You are not anxious. And because our mind
All right.
doesn't comprehend the difference between the statement. Like, if you say I am, whatever follows that statement is what you are, and your mind goes, oh, that's who we are, right? So and this goes both ways. So if you say I am anxious, then your mind finds ways to be anxious. If you say I am overwhelmed, then you will find ways to be overwhelmed. But if you say I am feeling anxious, I am feeling overwhelmed in this moment, okay, accept the feeling. Now what do I do about it? Because the feeling can change. If I am feeling sad, I'm not sadness. If I'm
Right.
feeling sad, I can go, okay, why am I feeling sad? Okay, well, this happened or that happened or my dog died or whatever, right? Okay, I can accept that. Now what do I do with that? Back to, I control my thoughts and my actions. So what do I do with that feeling? I can continue to be sad, or I can reflect, or I can write down what I'm grateful for in that moment. I can record my wins. Like, I can take action to change that feeling. But those I am statements are more powerful than people give them credit for. Like, you're not hungry, you're feeling hunger. Like, no one's ever
Right.
died from being hungry. Everybody, people have
Right.
died from starving, but nobody's died from I'm hungry. Okay, deal with it.
Well,
But
and I
those little shifts of the things that we say to ourselves are very, very powerful. And that's why you had that instant, like,
yeah,
oh shit, I don't do
yeah,
overwhelm. Damn right. Because you
yeah,
are not overwhelmed. You are feeling overwhelmed in that moment.
yeah. My buddy Andy Wines just came out with his book, "Words Fucking Matter," and he went one step further than I did with my book, "Fuck to Focus." Is he actually put the whole word in there? I put an asterisk in mine, and he's like, "Fuck it, I'm just going straight in." I'm like, "You do you, Andy." Um, but there's a lot there. I hadn't heard from the perspective of I am sad. I'm not sadness. I freaking love that. It's really cool way to pivot it. And now I'm going to play whatever the hell else I can use that, because it's the truth. I mean, I think the problem a lot of people have when they're thinking about all the way we speak to ourselves and the like is, once again, I'm going to go at the woo woo people. There's this whole idea of I can be rich, I can be rich, I can be rich, I can be rich. And all of a sudden, riches are going to fucking come your way type idea. And they've really hurt the idea that you can talk to yourself in a different manner if you just think about how you're talking to yourself. It's not about saying I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be rich. You know, it's not about the idea of manifesting yourself on these big fucking stages and all that kind of stuff. It's really about thinking about what you actually think about, thinking about what you actually say, and changing that vernacular. So thank you for that little tip because that's a cool one that I hadn't heard.
I use it in fitness all the time when people talk about I'm trying to lose weight. No, no, no. You are a fit person. That's the statement I want people to embrace. So I don't care if somebody's 800 pounds overweight. They look in the mirror and say, I am a fit person. Because then your brain goes, oh, I'm a fit person. So what do fit people do? Well, fit people exercise and they drink some water and they eat a fucking vegetable every now and then, and they're aware of their health decisions, right? If you say I'm trying to lose weight, well, what do people who are trying to lose weight do? Well, sometimes they do this and sometimes they do that, and then sometimes they eat a whole fucking cake, and sometimes but again, they're defining themselves with that statement, but your actions are going to follow those statements.
Right.
And the people that I can get that mental shift with in the gym are the people that are really successful long term, because they stop seeing the fat person in the mirror. That's the hardest part. When you get somebody that's lost a lot of weight, they don't see it. They still see somebody in the mirror that's not worthy, that's overweight, that was made fun of, that got picked on, all the things that happen when you're obese like that. But if you can get them to just shift that self-talk of like, no, I'm a fit person now. I may not have been then, but I am a fit person now. I'm a healthy person. I'm a person who values my health and fitness. And then your actions follow all those things.
Yeah, I remember listening to Zig Ziglar back in the day and all his stuff. And he was talking once upon a time about this extremely obese guy that he was working with. And he said that this guy walked by a window storefront. And when he walked by, all of a sudden, either the way the glass was shifted or whatever else, he saw himself as a very skinny person. And then from like that point on, the dude lost like 400 or 500 pounds, it was astronomical pounds. And he said he was talking to a couple of doctor friends of his, and they said the minute the person saw themselves actually as that fit individual, they were actually that fit individual, right? So the mind started shifting towards what does that fit individual do, like you're saying. I wish I could find those studies and things to see that, because it's just a cool thought process. The dude saw himself that way, and then the body, and he did the actions and did the work to come with it, of course, but the mind already said, okay, cool, that's the direction we're moving. That shit's just cool to me.
Yeah. And it's, you can call it what you want. You can call it manifestation or whatever, but it's what you're manifesting is action. That's
Right.
that's what the fuck you're manifesting. It ain't just
Right.
coming out of thin air. Like you begin taking action on the things that you desire in life when you identify what you want. And again, I agree with you. Some of this shit's gotten so woo woo that you're like, oh, don't fucking ask me what my why is again. Oh my god. But
fucking Huberman came out and he said the fucking coolest thing. Have you heard Huberman stuff? Huberman Labs.
mm-mm.
It's a cool fucking podcast. He's a freaking eye scientist, and he does all this shit with real eyesight and vision. It's fucking mind blowing, some of the science and studies they're doing. But one of the things he said is when people actually, goal setting can hurt a lot of people, because when you set these big, hairy, audacious goals everybody fucking talks about, oftentimes people will see themselves achieving that goal. The brain goes, cool, I did that, right? And then you
Uh-huh.
actually turn off the mechanisms that allow you to get there. So he said, he started studying these long distance runners and how were they able to go such a long distance. And so he started interviewing them. A lot of them put a huge project together. And what he found was the long distance runners were never looking at the finish line. They were picking something up ahead of them and they were running to that thing, right? And he said the people that actually tried to project to the finish line didn't make it to the finish line because all they could think about is I got to go fucking 100 miles.
Right.
And I just think this is still fascinating. And so I constantly am thinking through, okay, what's the next thing I'm working for? Yeah, I'm getting here, but what's the next thing I need to work for? What's that next milestone? And that's been a cool shift for the way I think about things versus, ooh, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to be a billionaire, right? And all that shit that gets thrown around.
And then you get it and you're like, well, now what the fuck do I do?
Right. 100%. 100%. Well, brother, we could do this for a freaking another hour or so, but I want to bring you as much value as possible. So, how can people find you? I tell you, people should watch you definitely on your Instagram because that's where I see most of your shit. And I'd heckle you more, but I'm trying to respect the game. So, how do people find you?
Facebook, Marc Zalmanoff. I'm always on Facebook. Instagram at the Fitness Ninja, and markzfitness.com is our website for all our fitness stuff. But I'm seriously not hard to find. I got the Make Good Choices podcast, Make Good Choices book on Amazon. Like, I'm just not hard to find. Like, there's only one
Well,
of me.
and
So
with your last name, dude, just
yeah.
typing your last name in life is good. And guys, Marc is speaking at the Badass Business Summit September 20th through the 23rd here in Fort Worth, Texas. Make sure you get your asses here. The cool thing that I love is all of our speakers will be in the audience. You'll get a chance to interact, make fun, shoot the shit, ask advice, from everybody that'll be there. So it'll be a badass time. And if you stuck out with us this long, do us a favor, take a screenshot of Marc and I hanging out here, freaking tag us on freaking social media, and Marc and I will both jump in and respond and say thanks. That's how we know you guys are out there listening to us is just take that screenshot, tag us in there, and it'd mean the world to me. Otherwise, love you, man. See